So hello everybody, greetings, and welcome to part 2 of our study on Noah. The official title of this teaching, The Two Calendars of Noah and the Walking Dedicated Men, part 4. Let's get right back where we left off. So, assuming that you've been with me throughout part 1 of this study, you know why I say here it is now possible to recover the 151 days of the first part of the flood, which is from the start of the flood to when the ark rests on the mountains of Ararat. You basically will start your calendar year. I'm not talking about where the flood starts because that's in month 2. But you will start your calendar year the Wednesday on or after fall equinox. And this was a principle that was in play from Adam and Enoch's calendars, which we already went over. So the flood day is actually 46 days after the start of this year, which began on the Wednesday on or after fall equinox. In the flood year, which is 2245 BC, and we also went over some of that earlier as well, this equates to November 7th in our current calendar. Now, I have a complete biblical chronology system, and there is a PowerPoint called Restoring the True Biblical Chronology, which gets into vast detail as to what the scriptural basis is for proclaiming precise dates for many events in the scripture that most folks think cannot be dated, like the exact day that our Messiah Yeshua was born, or the exact day of the Exodus. And so, if you visit me at onefaith.onepeopleministries.com, let me know, and I will direct you to where you can get a free study on that. Anyway, the 46 days is derived from month number 1, as we're trying to test, having 29 days left. Because each month is 30 days long. We're on the first day of the month. That leaves 29 days. And then we're going to add in the 17 days when month 2 starts. So 29 plus 17, 46. So the second month would then end on what is in our calendar, November 20th. The third month would then run 30 days, November 21st to December 20th. The fourth month, from December 21st to January 19th, which of course will put us into the following Gregorian year of 2244 BCE. Fifth month then runs January 20th to February 18th. And yes, I checked, there is no February 29th. February has only 28 days by Gregorian rules in our current calendar in 2244 BCE. And the sixth and final whole month of the flood will then be from February 19th to March 20th. 17 days later, the ark will rest on the mountains of Ararat. I say singular here, but the scripture is actually plural, mountains of Ararat. And the adjusted date in our modern calendar will be April 6th. April 6th, 2244 BCE is 151 days in all, which is inclusive of the first day of the flood. However, all this effort has just been to show how Noah's first calendar would have counted this time, which is the actual time of the flood. But now we need to get closer to the calendar that I believe Noah developed after the flood. Remember, Noah lives about 350 years after the start of the flood. So he's got quite a bit of time to tweak things. And it all started some years ago when I noticed something very odd in Genesis 8 verse 3. Now, we in Hebrew Roots, and we join with our fundamentalist evangelical Christian brothers and sisters to proclaim that Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. This is according to our Savior, Messiah Yeshua, and Messiah Yeshua known to the world as Jesus Christ, he quoted from all the books, Genesis, Exodus, again, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and gave all of them credited to Moses. And so, again, Moses said the ark rested, and here is the weird clue. Not on day 150, after 150 days. I thought that was really odd. If he meant the 151st day, why didn't he just say on the 151st day or the 152nd day? Instead, he gives these precise calendar references, this day of this month to that day of that month, and he only says this was after 150 days. I find that Moses is very precise in his details. He not only tells us the day of a feast or an event, he specifically references the exact timing of that event. For example, Passover isn't just at the start of the 14th day of the first month, which we call Abib, and some later sources call Nisan. Instead, it is 21 hours after the 13th of Abib ended, in the last 3 hours of the day, or what the Bible calls Bein Ha-Erevim, between the evenings, which is a very specific reference to a time between after late afternoon, but before the sun has gone down. And so I'm used to Moses being very, very precise in his references. So why just say after 150 days and not give the actual number? I found this kind of ambiguous language, as I said, very odd, because he's very precise, as I said. Why fudge on how many days after number 150 this event was? After many years of research, I concluded it was because by one calendar count, it was 151. And by the other calendar that was done later, it would have been 152. So we begin Noah 2.0. This part of the story, right here, from the scriptures, of course. And Noah built an altar to Yahweh, and he took every clean beast of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And Yahweh smelled the soothing fragrance, and Yahweh said in his heart, never again shall I curse the ground because of man, although the inclination of man's heart is evil from his youth, and never again will I smite all living creatures as I have done. Here's the key line. As long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, day and night, shall not cease. Genesis 8:20 through 22. So this starts Father Yah's covenant with the earth, and it is confirmed here. He says, and I shall establish my covenant with you, and never again is all flesh cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again is there a flood to destroy the earth. And Elohim said, this is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you, and every living creature that is with you. For all the generations to come, I shall set my rainbow in the cloud, and it will be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. And it shall be when I bring a cloud over the earth that the rainbow should be seen in the cloud. And I shall remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and never again let the waters become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I shall see it to remember the everlasting covenant between Elohim and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. And Elohim said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth. Genesis 9:11 through 17. So here are some important facts. Number 1, after the flood, Noah builds an altar. Number 2, after smelling the sweet aroma from the sacrifice on the altar, Father Yah makes a covenant, and the language is specific, with the entire planet and all the creatures that are on it. He will never destroy it by flood again. And number 3, He then promises 4 seasons, which he names seedtime and harvest, winter and summer, will never cease from the earth. Continuing this analysis, point number 4. The seasons are named, as we said, seedtime, which is actually fall. You sow your barley in the fall so that you can harvest it in the spring. Then he names summer and winter. Their ordering proves the year has been starting from seed time, fall equinox. That's how I know that Adam is created on the day of fall equinox. Number 5, Father Yah then confirms the covenant with the sign of the rainbow and extends protection also to Noah and to all of his descendants. Number 6, the names of the seasons and their sign hark back to the signs, seasons, days, and years system known since Adam's time. And here we go to point number 7. The rainbow also acts as a memorial to the entire covenant. Genesis 9 verse 16. So what is also being remembered are the 4 seasons. Again, seed time, harvest, summer, and winter. So that leads to number 8. The rainbow memorial then translates to Noah as an instruction to build in 4 memorial days to the solar year, 1 for each season. The rainbow also represents the horizon used in the daytime horizon to track the progress of the sun. And the chambers that we saw before are the arc of the rainbow, arcing at a 180-degree angle. This is what it looks like. Here you see a 180-degree angle. The bow in the clouds, the sign. There it is, the 180-degree daytime horizon. When you are looking like this right here, you're looking due east. Now, that's what that arrow says. And I point here to the 12 chambers of the sun. Now, I haven't shown them yet, so here they are. Chamber number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now, if you're wondering if my use of the Ark of the Covenant to represent these chambers is coincidental, I can assure you it is not. The measurements of the Ark of the Covenant match up to what we call the windows of heaven. These are not the chambers. The chambers are where the sun comes out, for a month. But each chamber, as the note below here says, each chamber of the sun has 12 windows at the top. Isaac will later represent the nighttime horizon because he lives 180 years, and again, this is 180 degrees. And David will replace this rainbow with the tabernacle of the sun in Psalm 19, but that's a story for a much later time. My point for right now is that the measurements of the ark, 2.5 cubits long by 1.5 cubits high by 1.5 cubits wide, matched the dimensions of the windows of each of these chambers. And that's a long story that I will get to later when we start talking about the calendars that Moses knew in Exodus, and also when we get to David's calendar, which is going to be obviously after that. But basically, those numbers, 2.5 by 1.5 by 1.5, are not coincidental. They match astronomical measurements for the apparent width and height of the sun. The length of the time that it rises out of a window, for example, is 2.5 days. And it is 2.5 cubits long. And the sun is also memorialized by the outstretched wings of the cherubim, or the angels. And Father Yah was said to dwell inside the gap in between the wings. That's why the prophet Malachi said that the sun, S-U-N, of righteousness will rise with healing where? In its wings. And you also have the wings of the morning that are mentioned elsewhere. So we'll get to all of that later on. But for the moment, understand that this is the pattern of the rainbow. Your 180-degree arc with your 12 chambers that the sun spends 30 days each throughout the year. In order then for Noah to memorialize each of the seasons, as I said, he needs 4 memorial days, which will come as he adds a 31st day at the end of every 3rd month. So that would in turn add 4 days to the 12 months of 30 days each. And that brings the total to 364 days, which will yield 4 seasons of 13 weeks or 91 days each. Point number 11. While Noah still uses the Adamic system of balancing the total year with a balancing day, the 53rd Wednesday, from when the luminary count started, and again we went over that with Adam, plus 2 witness days, Thursday and Friday, to certify that the fall equinox had happened, because on the equinox days, the sun will rise at 90 degrees due east. And even if it's not rising at 90 degrees, if it rises at a greater angle, you'll know definitely that that fall has started. The addition of the 4 remembrance days scattered throughout the year actually alters the length of certain months, which then alters the total amount of days. So here's how the first 6 months of the flood look under the new system, Noah 2.0, the post-flood calendar, which was not, I repeat, not the actual count of days. Noah counted by the first calendar, but I'm going to explain how that first count relates to this count. Your second month, 17th to the end, November 8th through 21st. Your third month, 30 days long, November 22nd to December 21st. And then you have your winter solstice remembrance day. So that's a 31-day month here, 30 plus this day on December 22nd. Your fourth month, 30 days long, will be December 23rd, to January 21st in 2244 BC. Your fifth month, 30 days, January 22nd to February 20th. And as I said before, no February 29th in that year. So February just has 28 days. Your sixth month, February 21st to March 22nd. And now you have, at the end of month 6, you have another Remembrance Day that acts as day 31 for vernal or spring equinox on March 23rd. Then in that fragmentary 7th month, 17 days, March 24th to April 9th, the ark rests on the mountains of Ararat. Total 152 days. So, again, by the first count, it's 151. By this count, it is 152. So, let's move on. Once again, this is how Moses, by merely saying, after 150 days, without specifying a number, actually gives secret testimony to the 2 calendars of Noah. The first calendar, which Noah used before the flood, merely had 12 30-day months and balanced at the end of month 12, as we saw. The second calendar, however, was constructed in response to the instructions Noah received from Father Yah after the flood, in Genesis 8 and in Genesis 9. Once Noah then added those remembrance days throughout the year, the whole day count changed from 151 to 152 days. Nevertheless, it was the first calendar that Noah had that counted the real timings of the flood, because the second calendar was not used until the flood was over. As we will also see later, The different lengths of the months between these calendars will in fact result in a 4-day divergence between them at the end of the year. But for now, let's just give the actual and original count of days. Following the rules laid out in the series on Adam, we begin the year of the flood, again 2245 BCE, with the Wednesday of fall equinox week that has 2 witnesses for it, which in our current calendar is Wednesday, September 22nd. So this is month 1. This is before the flood, from September 22nd, 922 to 1021. Month number 2, from October 22nd to November 20th. The flood will be on day 17 that started on this month, which will be November 7th, 2245 BCE. Month 3 then will be, because this month ended on November 20th, this is November 21st to December 20th. Month 4, December 21st to January 19th in the following year, 2244 BCE. Month 5, January 20th to February 18th. Month 6, February 19th through the 28th, right? And then March 1 through 20. Month 7, March 21st to April 19th. And the ark will rest on day 17 from this date. Day 17, April 6th, 2244 BCE. Now in Hebrew terms, April 6th, 2244 BCE corresponds to this: the 14th day of the first month of Abib, known as Passover. And we read this: and at that evening, the first evening, the ark would spend on dry land. It would be at the 15th, at the start of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So 797 years before Father Yah frees the Israelites from Egypt, before Exodus, Father Yah made the 15th of Abib a deliverance day. Right? So once the sun sets, that evening would have been the start of the 15th day, would have been the start of the Feast of Unleavened Bread and the start of the Exodus from Egypt. This is what we call a placeholder. And that's how far in advance that placeholder is given. That's quite a long time. It's also 151 days when we include month 2, day 17. Remember that Genesis says on that very same day they went into the ark. So that tells me that Moses is including that day. Moving after the flood, month 8, April 19th through May 18th. Month 9, May 19th, June 17th. Month 10, June 18th to July 17th. On day 1 of month 10, Genesis says, the mountaintops became visible. Then month 11, July 18th to August 16th. On day 11 of that day, because it's 40 days from this one, Noah sends out a raven and a dove, and the dove returns that night. Okay? So, that would be July 29th. On day 18, the second dove is sent out. She returns that night with an olive leaf, and to have the bird have an olive leaf in its beak points to this exact time of year, mid to late summer. The Gregorian date for day 18, month 11, was Friday, August 5th, 2244 BCE. On day 25 of that month, a week later, so this is day 18, so here's day 25, the third dove is sent out and it never returns. Month 12 will then run from August 17th to September 15th. But now Noah has to balance the year just like his ancestors Adam and Enoch did. Again, this is on the first calendar of Noah, the original one that was being used to count the flood. The end of month 12 was definitely not the end of Noah's solar year. Following Adam's system, Noah began the year with the luminary count, the fourth day of the week, Wednesday, September 22nd. Just like the moon will later be intercalated to add time to align with the solar year, so is the week here intercalated. Noah knows he has to complete this luminary count, that is, advance to the next Wednesday when the 12th month ended on a Thursday. So Noah therefore adds 6 more days to get to Wednesday, which will be September 21st, 2244 BC. And then the next 3 days will give 2 witnesses that the year has in fact ended, which will point Noah back to Wednesday, September 21st as NYD, New Year's Day. So now the count resumes. In between the years, because that's how the calendar balanced, in that you had a certain amount of days between the years from September 16th to September 20th. The new month 1 will be September 21st and end on October 20th. On day 1, month 1, September 21st, the water dried up from the area where the ark is. Then the new second month will run from October 21st to November 19th. And on day 27, which is November 16th, the entire earth, as Genesis says, is now dry. Total flood days, 375, including the first day of the flood, the 17th day of the second month. But I believe the reason it's important to study both of Noah's calendars is to understand how the concept of a solar month developed and then shifted. Because Genesis tells us exact calendar dates of the months, 17th day, second month, and all that, any alteration to the length of the months will affect the number of days between the months. I mean, if you're used to having 30 days only between months, then you have this number. But if you have 31-day months, that's going to increase the number. The 375 total days of the flood account was arrived at by all the months being 30 days long and balancing the year at the end of the 12th month. But after the seasons were named, remember again, seed time, harvest, summer, and winter, 8 verse 22 of Genesis. And then the rainbow pattern sign was established from Genesis 9:11 through 17. Now, after every 3 months was the 31st day. Since the flood happens over a full year, this means that we have 4 months that are 31 days long, and therefore 4 extra days to count. But again, since this system came after the flood, it is the first counting that is the original and correct one. Moses refers to both simply to give us the full history that we can recover. That is so amazing. But now there is one more development. I wouldn't call it a separate calendar, but it does happen on Noah's proverbial watch. As you can see, the title is Preparing the Moon. Noting again that Noah lives after the flood another 350 years, according to Genesis 9, verse 28 through 29. Noah is alive well into the time of Abraham. And so codes in Genesis 10 and 11, which is right before Abraham is born, those codes belong to Noah. So let's take a look at this a little bit more closely. This code in Genesis 10 and 11 is all about the moon. And Yoktan, or Joktan, as some translations say, brought forth Almodad, and Shelef, and Hatzarmaweth, and Yerah, or Yerach. There it is in Hebrew. This is the Hebrew word for moon. This guy is named Moon. Genesis 10:26. You read that correctly. The text literally reads that Yoktan brought forth the moon in the form of his fourth son. In other words, this is the generation, this is a hint in the text, that the moon is born or begins to come into its own gradually with the birth of the first guy named Moon. With this same exact generation gets repeated in Genesis 11, though, the moon's identity is confirmed, as we see here. Remember how the man named Moon was the son of a guy named Yoktan, or Joktan, and the nephew of a guy named Peleg. Peleg means division. It is the same word used for 24 divisions of the priests, serving week by week. And Yoktan, or Joktan, means little. So this means, in code, here's a code about dividing a little amount of time. Not years and centuries, lunar months, in other words. And it's this next generation, after we get the preview here, after these guys, it's that next generation that has the actual code. We read here, and Ru lived 32 years, brought forth Serug, and after he brought forth Serug, Ru lived 207 years, brought forth sons and daughters. And Serug lived 30 years and brought forth Nahor, and he brought forth Nahor. After he brought him forth, Serug lived 200 years and brought forth sons and daughters. Nahor lived 29 years and brought forth Terah. Okay, where's the code? It just seems a pretty conventional reading. Let me show you. Let's stay focused on these names. Remember, it is this generation that is being pointed to be about Yerach, the moon. We start with Yerach, the moon, and the word Ru, that first generation. Ru means his shepherd. Serug means branch. Nahor means illuminated. These are Aramaic people. These are Arameans that we're talking about. And through ancient Aramaic, I know that Nahor means illuminated, or that is illuminated. And Terah, the last generation before Abraham, or Abram, whose name means exalted father, there's a hint, means wanderer or wanders. What a sentence. The moon is his shepherd, the branch that is illuminated wanders. But how does the moon, his shepherd, wander? The answer comes after Ru, again, that's the name for his shepherd, with the ages of the next two, Serug and Nahor, when they have their sons. Serug is 30 and Nahor is 29. You're alternating between 30 and 29 years. Why is that a moon code? Simply put, the lunar month alternates between 30 and 29 days. It is in fact 29.53 solar days. So it's going to naturally alternate that way. What this proves is that the Hebrews have begun tracking the lunar cycles by mathematics, alternating between 30 and 29 days, much as the Egyptians and others around them did at the same time in history, and we've got those records to prove that they knew this. But this is a math process for the moon, a theoretical construct. It is not based on lunar observation, at least not quite yet. Soon, however, another timekeeping marker is coming. And it is the stars. Also mentioned in Genesis 1. But coming up next in the Walking Dedicated Men series, we have this. Part 5. The star catalog of the prophet Job. And I do mean star catalog. We'll explain how this is one of the greatest astronomers of them all, coming in part 5 on the Walking Dedicated Men. Until then, thank you very much for your kind attention. Remember, I'm Andrew Gabriel Roth, and if you want to find out more about subscribing to my weekly Torah and New Testament teachings, go to onefaith.onepeopleministries.com. Meanwhile, I thank you very much for your time in exploring these great biblical mysteries. And again, as we like to say in Hebrew, Shalom and thank you. Have a great day.